Open world games are dime a dozen these days. Whether we are discussing Ghost of Tsushima, Halo Infinite, or so many damn Ubisoft games, almost every single player game these days, God I sound old, features a large map filled with a litany of objectives to complete and collectibles to obtain, often boasting tens and maybe even hundreds of hours worth of content, even if sometimes that said content isn't all that great, to be perfectly honest. Many open world games recycle similar objectives like bandit camps and tower climbs, all to the point that these games can become as tedious as filing one's taxes. These games can blur together, lacking distinct levels or missions. They can be duller than the Crossroads of Twilight, you know, the shittiest Wheel of Time book. And while there are open world games that are quite good, see Marvel's Spider-Man, Grand Theft Auto 5, and Halo Infinite, there are still way too many massive open world games that revel in mediocrity and lack a sense of identity, just like me in my 20s. What the hell are you doing, younger Riley? Figure your shit out, damn it. Be gay. Do ethical crimes. 2017's Horizon Zero Dawn was one of the best versions of a modern open world game. The Guerrilla Games PlayStation exclusive, caveat, featured an engrossing sci-fi fantasy narrative, a compelling female lead in Aloy, as well as a great vocal performance from Ashley Birch, stunning story twists, a living and breathing fleshed out world, and unique bow and arrow based gameplay. And while sure the game had a very large open world with a similar type of shopping cart list style of objectives as other open world titles, Horizon Zero Dawn's quests and missions had many uniquities that allowed it to stand out. For starters, there are machine beasts that are predatory and attack humans on sight. There's a wide variety of weapons and strategies that are unique to this game and this world. The combat had a rock, paper, scissors feel to it due to how different machines and people were more susceptible to different elemental attacks compared to others. And then there's the fact that the storytelling, world building, and characterizations were so good that I ultimately cared about doing every single side quest possible, mostly because I really wanted to make a difference in Horizon Zero Dawn's world. I cared about its peoples, its landscapes, and its intricacies, and with that, I felt a personal investment in the game. It's pretty great. This is true for the newly released sequel, Horizon Forbidden West, as well. Like its predecessor, Horizon Forbidden West features similar stellar positive points. It has a terrific story, fantastic world building, a wonderful female protagonist in Aloy, and distinct combat that allows the Horizon series to have its own interesting place in the open world space. It's pretty awesome. But even beyond that, Horizon Forbidden West is truly an advancement on the first game. In terms of its story, the sequel advances the narrative in some truly interesting ways. It portrays Aloy as a heroic yet flawed character who goes on a meaningful arc. It expands the scope of the world in terms of world building, and the gameplay really doubles down on its rock, paper, scissors style combat in a way that makes the player really contemplate every potential tactical maneuver. It's exemplary, and whether we are discussing the story, character development, or the gameplay, Horizon Forbidden West strikes gold when it comes to crafting a complementary video game experience. It is a lot of fun. Horizon Forbidden West's positive qualities start with its story. The plot follows Aloy, a woman who is living in a post-apocalyptic Earth roughly 1,000 years into the future. In this collapse of our modern world, humanity lives in tribal societies as they live amongst monstrous and murderous machines. And among all the people living during this time, Aloy is the most notable person alive. Through the events of the first game, we learned that Aloy is a clone of Elizabeth Sobek, who in the game's fictional reality was one of the most genius people to have ever lived. Einstein, Hawking, or the architect behind the Zune? Soggy chicken nuggets. We are talking about Sobek, a fictional woman born in the 2020s who used her keen intellect to combat and even circumvent an existential killer robot army that was so powerful it would have given the T-1000 a boner so massive it would have short-circuited. And Aloy is similarly brilliant in her own way. She is goal-driven. She desires to save her world from violent disaster and environmental catastrophe. How relatable. She has the ability to execute her plans. She can bring people together, as well as access old world technology due to her prowess and her genetic code. She is immensely capable in a fight and gets the job done, as we learned in the previous game, where she decisively stopped a Karja civil war, saved the city of Meridian against overwhelming odds, and thwarted the nefarious old world AI known as Hades, decommissioning the threat like an Apple employee deactivating a 2-year-old iPhone, which is 85 in phone years. Aloy is simply the best of the best. Horizon Forbidden Forbidden West takes place roughly 6 months after the first game ends. See, even with Hades' defeat, Aloy's quest to save the world isn't done. The world is still dying from an environmental apocalypse, and the realm's political factions are still scattered. She is simply running out of time, and in order to be the world's hero, she is trying to find a backup of Gaia, a benevolent old-world AI and terraforming system that can reverse Earth's impending environmental doom. But recovering a Gaia backup is easier said than done, mostly because Aloy must travel to the Forbidden West, a locale ruled by the Tenakth, which is a warrior-focused combat-active tribe, and from there Aloy must navigate a tense political situation, a Tenakth civil war, the schemes of the hyper-intelligent and nefarious Silence, the death robots, and the unknown threat that sent a signal that killed the original Gaia 20 years prior to the game's start, also that she can be the world's savior. The story is pretty damn great, mostly because Aloy is a very relatable protagonist. As a character, Aloy is tough, confident, and goal-driven, but she does have a personal failing in that she likes to keep her friends like Varl at a distance in order to more or less go it alone on her mission. She believes that saving the world is her burden alone, just like how being a jackass is Elon Musk's. But here is the thing, Aloy is incorrect. As wonderful and brilliant as she is, Aloy doesn't need to isolate herself. There is no weakness for wanting or asking for help, because being surrounded by the people we love, the ones that can ease our troubles, makes us stronger, even though opening up and being vulnerable can be scary. And with that, Aloy goes on a great and resonant arc where she must learn how to cooperate with those who want to be on her team. It's pretty heartwarming, to be honest. Aloy's characterization allows the player to become invested in the game's world. By having such a vibrant and personable character as the lead, we, the player, gain motivation to play the game. We care about Aloy, thus we care about her adventure, and thus we care about Forbidden West's world, peoples, cultures, political conflicts, side quests, and etc. The game's world feels alive, unlike the discourse surrounding it. And honestly, that's all thanks to Aloy's character. Sure, the world building, the lore, and the characters are all dynamic and interesting, but Aloy's relatable nature makes the story and journey worth taking just as much as the gameplay, which is really saying something, seeing as Forbidden West's map is fucking huge and filled with a near overwhelming amount of stuff to do. But honestly, that's how good Aloy is as a character. The spark starts with her, and she makes the journey worth it alone. Aloy is also a good character to play as, mostly because she is the literal embodiment of awesome. See, when playing a game, it is overwhelmingly enjoyable when that said game makes you feel like the coolest and most important person in the world, which in Horizon Forbidden West's case, that's Aloy. She can perform feats others can only dream of. She has the combat capability of 10 warriors combined. She can take down the most fearsome machines. She can solve complicated geopolitical crises. She is so damn cool, and as a result, Aloy is a lot of fun to play as. After all, who doesn't like the idea of being awesome? I like being awesome, and with Aloy, we the player can live through her awesomeness vicariously. It feels good to play as her. The gameplay is also fantastic in and of itself. Starting with the combat, there is a great mix of stealth and action. Before combat encounters, whether we are discussing the machines or the humans, it is always beneficial to scan all the enemies with Aloy's high-tech focus in order to see what their strengths and weaknesses are. If you decide to stealth it, you can set up traps, move from cover to cover, throw a rock as a distraction, quietly take enemies out from behind like a more violent version of Batman, or if you think you can score a critical hit, you might launch a headshot at an enemy from long range, though this won't happen as much because a lot of the human enemies in Forbidden West wear armored helmets on their heads, something that encourages the player to experiment with elemental effects like armor tear, electric flame, and acid damage, and etc. And if you are discovered, then all hell breaks loose like a mosh pit at a Slayer concert, starting a frantic firefight where the player uses Aloy's focus to slow down time in order to line up shots, aiming at enemy weak points, dodging and rolling, switching to different weapons with more beneficial elemental effects, and using special abilities and attacks. These attacks, which are unlocked via an extensive upgrade system, come in two forms. The first are swappable weapon-specific attacks, like Triple Notch or wrist shooting the trap weapon dubbed the Tripcaster, which are moves that require the player to use up their stamina meter. And the second special ability is the customizable overdrive type of metered ability that come in multiple forms like increased damage mode, timed shots, and etc., which can consistently changes the way the player plays the game and keeps the gameplay loop refreshing, something that is vitally important for a lengthy title like Forbidden West. And combined with the rest of the combat, the special abilities make for a frantic experience, though the chaos is always somewhat manageable because there are ways where the player can escape enemies' line of sight and go back into stealth. And due to this, the game is a hell of a lot of fun to play, especially when the player is fighting the game's extensive list of awesome looking machine-like monstrosities, which are visually on par with my freshman yearbook photo. No, you're not seeing that, and that's not the point. The point is that Horizon Forbidden West's metallic beasts add a lot of variety to enemy encounters alone, and alongside the rest of the combat, the game is exhilarating. It's quite great. The upgrade system is fairly enjoyable as well. In the game, the player levels up at a fairly rewarding rate. There's no microtransactions, meaning that the game isn't designed to be grindier all for the sake of selling XP boosters in order to skip the grind or whatever. It's just fun and engaging on its own merits in a way that yields tangible rewards at a brisk pace. See, every time the player levels up or completes side quests, they earn skill points. And yes, I understand that you, the viewer, probably already know what skill points are by now, you educated gamers, you. But Horizon Forbidden West really differentiates itself from its competition by just how extensive its skill trees, plural, are. These skill points and all the available skill trees allow you to upgrade your character's melee damage, improve crafting, unlock a volley ability for your hunter bow, and upgrade special attacks. And there's honestly more, so much more, but you get the idea here. Horizon Forbidden West features a lot of upgrade options that allow you to tailor-make your preferred character in a timely and rewarding fashion. Very much unlike Anthem, the gadgets pace out the game very nicely as well. Throughout the main story, Aloy accrues new abilities that allow her to overcome terrain that was once inaccessible to her earlier in the game, and by extension, the player. Alongside the grapple shot, which the player has from the start, the player learns how to explode crystals that can knock down walls, breathe underwater, hang glide like my boy Zelda, and more. And these are all items that help add more variety and depth to the gameplay, which is cool, along with the fact that all these gadgets kind of exemplify how Aloy is basically this realm's version of Batman, but less moody. Though the lack of moodiness should go without saying. She's never listened to Nirvana after all. Now that's what's truly depressing. The crafting system is terrific as well. Whether we are discussing the plants, wild animals, or the various machines, Horizon Forbidden West boasts a lot of lootable materials that contribute to a robust crafting system. Throughout the game, these aforementioned materials can be foraged and utilized to bolster up your gear, improve medicine pouches, craft recipes for meals that give the player bonus status effects when consumed, because in the perfect world, eating a gyro would temporarily give me a +5 on my sleep stat. Materials can be used to improve arrow and trap capacity, and you can harvest machine parts so you can learn to override more machines, i.e. an ability that brainwashes a machine that causes the machine to see Aloy as a friendly and see other machines and combative humans as enemies. And with all this nuance within the crafting system, Horizon Forbidden West provides yet another gameplay element that is both rewarding and refreshing due to how it both consistently allows you to upgrade your materials, all while helping Aloy improve her combat capability. It's really good. Horizon Forbidden West features a lot of stuff to do as well. Given that the map is bigger than 500,000 Rhode Islands, the game features a huge swath of content that will keep the player occupied. There's story missions, side quests, errand quests, bandit camps, cauldron missions, contracts, environmental puzzles, tall neck climbs, hunting grounds, fight pits, card games, and more that all add variety to the game. And to make it even better, most of these quests and missions have their own level design uniquities that prevent the game from getting stale. For example, climbing tall necks is always a thrilling blast, and the side quests all have their own distinct narratives, characters, and payoffs. It's all quite good, though with that being said, I did end up putting the least essential missions to the wayside later on in the game as the story ramped up. But even with that caveat, Horizon Forbidden West is absolutely stacked with meaningful content, just like how I'm stacked with meaningful estrogen, because I am Goral. Horizon Forbidden West just has a lot of entertaining tasks to complete, complete, and as a result, it is always fun. The graphics are beautiful too. In fact, Horizon Forbidden West is drop-dead gorgeous. There are a wide variety of locales that all have their own distinct looks and feels, settings like arid deserts, lush forests, snowy mountains, and picturesque oceans, which is something that is especially important seeing as there is a distinct visual difference between ocean water and fresh water in the game, which is impressive in and of itself. Hell, the waters even behave differently. River water flows, whilst ocean water comes in waves. It's so damn cool, but regardless of the location, all of these environments are incredibly detailed and feature striking colors that all have a certain pop. They are stunning. Horizon Forbidden West additionally boasts some quality of life improvements. The HUD is less intrusive, the player automatically has the ability to call their metal mount to their current position without having to spend skill points in order to do so, and Aloy's focus can reveal climbable materials, ensuring that you never have to second guess whether an object is climbable, like how I never second guess my life's choices. I am a free spirit, and I embrace that shit. Admittedly, with all that being said though, Horizon Forbidden West does contain some imperfections. For one thing, the story doesn't sucker punch the player as much as it did in the first game. In the previous title, Horizon Zero Dawn, the mystery regarding how this post-apocalyptic Earth came about, as well as Aloy's origins as a clone, no relation, was so damn compelling. The plot repeatedly slammed the player in the gut. It was oftentimes a very bleak experience, which made for a really interesting narrative. But sadly, Horizon Forbidden West lacks a similar gut punch. While the narrative strength lay elsewhere, mostly in the form of the development of its characters, the interactions of those said characters, and the strength of its world building, Horizon Forbidden West doesn't throw as many narrative curveballs. Sure, the game cooks up some devious plot twists from time to time, and the narrative is still pretty great on its own merits, but the game shocks the player far less often than its predecessor. Less to do with upending our understanding of the story, Horizon Forbidden West is more character-based. It's still great in its own right, but it also just doesn't hit you as hard as the first game did, just saying. The ending admittedly has a few issues as well, though don't worry, I'm not going to spoil anything. While Horizon Forbidden West's finale is overall quite good, it does contain a few narrative wrinkles that I disagree with. There's a couple character turns that I don't care for, and the finale really sequel baits you. And yeah, I know that I'm being vague here, but I'll probably elaborate more in a future spoiler video, because honestly I don't want to discuss it too much here because I don't want to spoil you in this review, because I'm considerate like that. Now be grateful, you piece of shit. Map maneuverability is another problem. See, Horizon Forbidden West is a huge world with various mountains to climb and waterways to dive into, yet the game's HUD lacks a mini-map, meaning that in order to check and see where you are heading, the player needs to open up their map to see if they are heading in the right direction and using the right road. And this is honestly a problem, mostly because unless I was consulting my map, I was often unsure if I was actually going in the right direction. And while I do understand that the developers want you to focus on looking at the game's impressive environments and landscapes more so than add a minimap on your HUD, the game's lack of minimap or direction arrows highlighting the best path to the player's current open world objective forces the player to have to pause the game repeatedly in order to ensure that they are heading in the right direction, which is truly far from an optimal video game experience. It's very stop and go. Last but not least, let's discuss the glitches, because seeing as this is a massive open world game, Horizon Forbidden West contains a fair few bugs. Some are subtle, like your metal mount being unable to navigate a certain piece of terrain. Some are silly, like when some enemies are clipped on the world's various environments. And then there are the persistent and frustrating ones, like when the player needs to clear an area of enemies in order to move forward in a mission, but sadly can't do so because there aren't any damn enemies near you, mostly because the machine or the human that you need to kill is hidden far away. And honestly, I often reloaded saves and had to restart these sections, which was so damn irritating. I essentially had to backtrack, and it was essentially the worst part of the game. With all that out of the way though, Horizon Forbidden West is a stellar video game experience. While the game has a few problems by the way of glitches, map maneuverability, and certain storytelling decisions, Horizon Forbidden West is pretty damn awesome. Aloy is a very likable character that is fun to play as. Aloy experiences a wonderful character arc, the combat is addicting, the visuals cause me to salivate and wonder, the upgrade system and crafting are extremely rewarding, and there's a lot of meaningful content within the game. And that's pretty much key, because even in the overcrowded open world genre, Horizon Forbidden West takes its own claim in this video game space. It has its own identity. And with that, that was the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like rating, share, subscribe, ring the bell, and leave a comment telling me what you think of Horizon Forbidden West. Also, please consider checking out my Patreon page. $1 a month gets you onto my Discord server, and $5 a month allows you to start making review requests. The link to the Patreon is in the description. And speaking of my Patreon, I just want to thank my patrons, particularly my high tier ones, and David, Samantha, Devlin, Mom, and Morgan. Thank you so much for supporting what I do. Love y'all.